Today, we've got Trey Laird, the CEO founder of The Lighthouse, with us. And for those folks who are watching this, we're actually in a new setup. Might not recognize this studio. We're on site at the Mental Health Marketing Conference in Franklin, Tennessee this week, hearing from a bunch of really tactical and strategic marketers about what's coming down the pipe for mental health. That's what brought Trey here. That's what brought me here. And we're happy that we can connect and learn a little bit about the Lighthouse and Trey's journey over the last 10 years. Trey, thanks for joining us. Would love you just to set this up for folks. Let's talk about, what is the Lighthouse in basics? Where are you guys located?
Right.
Who do you serve?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Great to be here. Appreciate you reaching out and excited to talk a little bit about, the journey, both mine and the Lighthouse. So the Lighthouse started in 2016. We'll have 10 years in January. And it was really born out of my own experience when I got sick and needed treatment in 2008. So 8 years before we even started. When I was in treatment in 2008, my family invited me not to live at home anymore after treatment. And I went to my counselor and said, I need to figure out where I'm going to live. And they said, well, you should go live in a sober house. And I had never heard of that before. I didn't know what they were talking about. And I said, okay, give me the phone number. I'll consider that. And they said, well, Trey, I was in treatment in Connecticut near my house. I was working in New York City, running a trading desk, and I had a 23-year career in financial services, trading equities before the Lighthouse. So I was in the middle of that. And they said, well, Trey, we would suggest you go to Florida or California for, 90 days or so and kind of do it there. And I said, well, it doesn't make sense to me. My company's already given me 30 days off. And I'm absolutely not going to ask them for another 90 days off before I go back to work. In addition to that, my family's here, my kids, my wife, and my community. And so I don't think that makes much sense. And they said, it doesn't, but there isn't any good option for you here locally in Connecticut or even in New York. And so we don't really have any other good ideas for you. So it wasn't like I said in that moment, I need to start something for guys like me. But eventually that was really the seed that was planted that sprouted 8 years later into what is the Lighthouse today, which is we have beautiful recovery residences. So 10,000 square foot homes in New Canaan on 5 acres. New Canaan's about an hour outside of New York City. So a large portion of our clients are commuting to work on a daily basis, either to New York City or Greenwich or White Plains or wherever they go to work. And what we're offering our clients is the opportunity. Most of our clients are coming to us after a 30-day treatment stay, and they're kind of merging back into their life and applying all the tools that they've learned in their treatment opportunity into their real life setting. So our clients wake up in the morning, get in their car, go to Starbucks, go to work, and have real life experience every day without drinking or using drugs. For some of them, that's new. And that's really like they learned about it when they were in residential treatment, but they haven't applied those tools until they get to us. So all we're offering is a super comfortable high-end luxury experience, which includes chef and beautiful home. And it also includes recovery coaching and family coaching and, the opportunity to connect and live with other men and women, 2 separate homes that they can identify with, right? Who also have a lot on their plate professionally, maritally, as a parent, and all of those relationships that can be extremely high stress in early recovery. We started as a men's house in 2016. We opened the women's facility in March of 2020, right as the world was shutting down. So that was an interesting experience. It actually worked out well for us because in COVID, what happened was people who were struggling with alcohol or other drugs and living by themselves were really struggling. And so they had the opportunity to come live in community instead and work on their recovery. They also didn't have to tell their company where they were dialing in from or zooming in from that day. And so we had lots of professionals reach out to us in that time frame who got a lot of recovery and were able to not miss a beat professionally because they were just doing it from the Lighthouse. Today, we also have, men's house, women's house, as well as some apartments in New Canaan. So a total of 24 residential beds. And we offer all of our services, coaching services, family coaching, and really the opportunity to connect and be a member of our club for clients who don't live with us, right? So non-residential clients. And So we'll have at any given time, 35 to 60 non-residential clients. So all told, if you add in everything, we're probably around 75 clients average on a daily basis. We don't provide any clinical services. So, all of our clients have psychiatrists or therapists, or maybe they're going to an outpatient, an IOP. What we provide is the coaching, the peer-to-peer support. All of our staff are people in recovery themselves. And so, I was just listening to the guy from Cohen Veterans Network, and he said, what we found is that veterans listen to other veterans. And so, what I thought to myself immediately was like, our clients listen to our staff because they have that lived experience. They've walked that path of, how do I navigate early recovery with my spouse, with my kids, with my boss, with the people that report to me? There's so much that comes up for them. Like, do I walk back into work and tell everybody I was in treatment and now I'm not drinking anymore? Or do I keep that a secret? It doesn't feel good to be a secret, right? Those are things that, our coaches and our staff are really helpful on, helping our clients kind of navigate those early decisions.
So you had your experience with recovery in 2008, and then in 2016, you founded The Lighthouse. What was going on in those in-between years that led you to say, hey, I actually want to do this. I want to found a place like this.
Yeah. So in 2008, as I said, was not on the roadmap, right? I was rushing back to work because I loved what I did professionally. I loved working on a trading desk. I loved the team environment and calling clients every day and building relationships. That was, if you had asked me even as late as 2012, I would have told you I'm going to do this for the rest of my life and do it happily, well compensated, love what I did, and was pretty good at it. And my first 90 days out of treatment, living by myself, I didn't go to a sober house because there wasn't one, but I went to 150 AA meetings. That's what changed my life, right? So I went to tons of meetings in Fairfield County, New Canaan, Darien, Greenwich, Westport, as well as in New York City. And I met this huge recovery community that I never knew existed. And not only were these guys that I looked up to because they had figured out how to navigate not drinking and drugging, but they also had massive successes professionally, personally, and they just were living life the way that I had always thought I wanted to live my life, but was unable to. And so through that process, I was a happy consumer of the 12-step fellowship. And what I did was I started volunteering at the place where I got help. And so that put me face to face with guys that were 6 months behind me, or a year behind me, or 2 years behind me. And I ended up having relationships with those guys as they were leaving treatment. And I realized that I really enjoyed mentoring them and sort of showing them the path and sponsoring them under the 12-step umbrella. And what I found was that a lot of them were in the same position that I was in when I was leaving treatment. They didn't want to go home, or they couldn't live at home, or they lived alone and they were struggling. And so along the way, what I was learning, I didn't know it at the time, but what I was learning was that I was not a unique experience, and that, there was lots of people that could benefit from having a high-end, comfortable, let's call it luxury experience after treatment to live out those next 90, 120 days. So in 2012, a place opened in New York City called Serenity. They positioned themselves as high-end sober living. And I had some guys that I met who were going there, and they raved about it. They said, Trey, this place is great. I'm going to work, but the guys I'm living with are cool. And the place is super high-end and the food's good. And they were happy. The thing about early recovery is usually you find that people talk about it as being very difficult and a struggle. And I got to do the work. But these guys were talking about it in positive terms. Like they were having the same experience that I had, which was I actually love the way my life is progressing and the way I'm feeling. And so I said to myself, gosh, that's probably where I would have gone if it had existed in 2008. So my next thought was like, I wonder if we could do that in Connecticut. And I tried to figure out, who was running Serenity and who the group was. And I was unsuccessful, but I also saw them go from one house to 6 houses in about 18 months. So I was like, there is a market there. And at the same time, the firm I was working at on Wall Street sold the division that I was with to another firm. And so overnight I was working at a different place that I wasn't as excited about working at. Things outside of my control led me down this path to eventually in 2015, I was questioning whether I wanted to keep doing it. And I was like, well, if I'm not trading stocks, what am I going to do with my life? And again, having really good experience in my 12-step community, helping out and sponsoring, mentoring a lot of guys. And I said, maybe we could do something like what they're doing in New York, but in Connecticut. And then, I kind of talked to some other people about it that I respected who were also in recovery. They said, Trey, that might be a good idea. Why don't we let's do a business plan? And, that's what led to eventually in January of 2016, starting The Lighthouse.
When you were creating that business plan, what were your kind of initial bets on how you wanted to run this place? And do they differ greatly from kind of what it turned into?
So the product that I wanted to put on the table, right, was the 4 seasons of sober living.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what I wanted was a physical plant where somebody walked in the door and said, this place is amazing. I never want to leave here, which is my experience when I go to a 4 seasons property, right? Mm-hmm. Which included amenities like sheets and soap and the TV room and what's in the fridge and great chef. And that has not changed. Like that's been a core principle for us from day one. The big difference was my initial marketing or business plan was all I'm going to do when we open up for business is call the place where I went to treatment and I'm still a volunteer and let them know that we're open and that they can start sending all of the guys like me to our place when they discharge. And when I made that phone call, they literally hung up on me.
You'd been volunteering there for years.
Exactly. They were like, Trey, who? And so I panicked and I'm like, oh God, we have a beautiful house and we believe in what we're offering. But if nobody shows up, we're out of business quickly, right?
Yeah. Wait, is this like almost launch day when you made that call?
It is launch day.
It is.
Yeah. It is launch day. I was so confident of that referral relationship being gold that I didn't even question it, right? And then I had to question it. And so what came out of that was my next thought was like, okay, so if that treatment center isn't going to partner with me, where are my clients going to come from? And what that led me to was exploring and understanding. So if executives didn't go to that treatment center, where do they go? And that introduced me to places like Karen and Cirque Lodge and Hanley Center and Borden Cottage. And I realized there's lots of other places where executives go for treatment who eventually return home to the New York metro market or area. That's where they live. And I needed to build relationships with all of those places. And so I got on a plane and I, like one by one thing I do well is like network and figure out like who are the important decision makers at each of these places. And I did that. Fortunately, Connecticut is pretty rich in addiction treatment. So in addition to the place where I went, Silver Hill, there's High Watch and there's Mountainside. And so just locally I could connect with them and then get on a plane and go to Utah and visit Cirque Lodge and go to Florida and visit Karen Ocean Drive and Hanley Center and build relationships. But it didn't happen quickly.
Yeah, but kind of walk me through it. I mean, just to say, and I got meetings with these folks and I got meetings with these folks. I'm sure there's more that goes into that. So, networking 101 for dummies, like what were the steps you did to actually get them to talk to you?
So what I learned was any treatment center that I reached out to, I didn't position myself as somebody that was looking for something from them. I wanted to learn more about what they did, right? Because every good treatment center operator understands I'm going to get phone calls for people that need help and I'm not going to be able to serve them if I'm not the appropriate level of care. So I'm going to end up being a referent into treatment centers, right? And so once they realize that, they're rolling out, not the red carpet, but like they're happy to meet with me and show me around their facility and talk about what they do. And you know what? It worked for them because I've sent lots and lots of people to residential treatment and I send them to places that I visited and built relationships with early on. So we're a big referent into some of these places. And so they were happy to meet with me, less happy to kind of understand or, send clients our way because again, we were not established, not a known brand. And when people are making referrals in addiction treatment, they're very careful about it. Or they should be very careful about it. I'm very careful about it, right? Because if I make one bad referral, it's bad for me. It's bad for my brand, right? Yeah. So even today, we probably have 10 referral partners max that we're comfortable, recommending people to. And it was a symbiotic relationship. The initial treatment center that I thought would be my only partner did come around and we have a good relationship today and we work very closely with them. But it was good that they said no on day one. They hung up on me on day one because it did force me and take me down the line of understanding what the addiction treatment landscape looks like nationally for executives, right? Because there's a lot of bad treatment centers out there. I visit and I don't recommend them. So, The Lighthouse can be strengthened and my brand can be strengthened by making a good referral, right? But I've learned those. I mean, it's been a long process.
Yeah, 10 years. So still keeping with those first couple of days and even beforehand, I guess I'm really curious to know, once you decided I'm going to just make one of these myself, how did you go about making all the thousands of tiny decisions you need to, like where should it be located? And once I have a location, what's the building going to look like? What should I buy? What type of property am I looking for? What were some of those decisions you had to make? And then how did you make them?
Yeah. Some quickly and some slowly and some, very financially based, right? Mm-hmm. So we were really lucky. We had some of the things that we intuitively knew were important to having success. By that, I mean, we had a referral partner that we thought would be a referral partner. We didn't know at the time that they weren't going to be interested on day one, but they were like literally 5 minutes from us and they were treating our client, right? And by our client, I mean somebody with means, somebody that, is going to spend out of pocket, $50,000 to $100,000 on a month of care. Mm-hmm. We also had a super robust 12-step community in Fairfield County. And so I didn't know it at the time, but Fairfield County has more 12-step meetings on a weekly basis than any other area in New York Metro, meaning New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, except for New York City. So if our program, if you will, is send people to AA meetings, we had a lot of them to help us with, right? And then the last piece of the puzzle that, again, was completely outside our hula hoop, but just we got completely lucky, was that there was a depression in high-end luxury real estate in our area right at the time that we were starting. And so because of a confluence of events, Wall Street having a couple down years, some major Fortune 500 companies leaving the area, there were literally 100 homes to choose from, and like not even to buy. We were not going to buy. We were going to lease them at relatively good prices, right? So we ended up leasing our first house in Darien, Connecticut. It was, 8,000 square feet on 4 acres. It had, 6 bedrooms. It was gorgeous, like gorgeous. And we rented it for not a lot of money. Yeah. And if we didn't get that one, we probably would have had 2 or 3 other ones. The other important thing that was instrumental in deciding how we wanted to set this up, clinical or non-clinical, was as I was doing my research about, sober livings, I came to understand that they're protected at the federal level by the Fair Housing Act, which means I didn't need a license. I didn't need a certification. I didn't need approval. I didn't need to go to planning and zoning. Like literally all we needed to do was rent the house and then start telling people that we were open, which is a little bit scary, right? Because I knew that, I had lived in this community, for most of my life. And I knew that the neighbors and the locals might have a problem with that. Like, what do you mean you just opened up this place without talking to anybody, right? So I had to get some legal advice. And I, again, good at networking, good at figuring out like who can help me. So I got both national and local legal counsel to help me navigate it. Those were some of the decisions that we made early on of like, how are we going to move forward? We raised a little bit of capital, but we were super careful. Important to note that any treatment or, sober living business is all fixed cost. Right? Like the building that you own, the rent that you pay, the staff, it's all fixed cost. So what that means is that, you're incented to fill it up to capacity as quickly as you can. Having said that, one wrong client, one bad mistake, one death in the house, like you're out of business. Yeah. And so, we had to be very careful and mindful of like balancing that. Who's the right person and having clients only come who fit the profile of the client that we're trying to serve, as well as like, turning away people that have good money, but they're not right for us. Yeah. And that continues, today to be, we send away more than half of the people that call us. Yeah. Even if they can pay, because they're just not the right profile.
There's a whole topic there of, specializing and understanding your niche and not trying to treat everybody, but helping everybody, obviously, who comes to you and with a great referral. I'm kind of curious too, on day one or before, had you hired all the people that you needed to hire? And how did you choose the right people to hire?
Yeah. So on day one, it was myself and my 2 co-founders. Yeah. And we did not hire anybody. And the idea was my co-founder, Tony, he had operating experience. He was another ex-Wall Street guy who had left Wall Street, 3 or 4 years before me and had become an operator of a, Christian-based recovery center close by. And so he had literally taken care of 25 guys for a couple of years. And the deal was like Tony was going to operate and like take care of people. And I was going to be the person that would solicit and do business development and figure out how to get people to come stay with us. Yeah. We weren't paying ourselves, said we're going to do this for a year, 18 months without any pay, and had to, have our own personal finances able to support that. We made our first hire once we had 3 clients in the house. And our first hire was a guy who's still with us today, Jack Clayton, who has been such an amazing story. We could do a whole hour on Jack and his story, but Jack was basically coming out of jail and needed a place to live, and, was known to us through some friends locally in the 12-step community. And Jack moved in as the first house manager. We hired slowly, we hired carefully, and, we really did a lot of it ourselves, right? Like we were the overnight staff until we hired Jack. So, Tony and I and Jim would take turns like sleeping at the house. And my wife was like, hold on, what are you telling me? You're not going to sleep here? Yeah. So, a lot of it too came, if I didn't have the support of my family, it would have been a much harder road. We just got really lucky in a lot of aspects, but slow to hire. And we haven't, fortunately, had to fire many people, but when you need to do it quickly.
Did you feel ready when you opened the doors on day one? Did you have everything, T's were crossed, I's were dotted? Or did you say, we gotta start this?
We knew that what we were creating was a new category. And so there was only so much prep that we could do. We knew that we were going to have to learn as we go. And I think we did a pretty good job of that, like constant communication. I was literally, Tony and I worked from the first Lighthouse. So we were there on site. And, what would happen if a guy who, said they were moving in on Tuesday showed up and he was clearly inebriated, right? Like, okay, you can't be here, but we can't just throw you on the street and you can't get back in your car because you just drove here drunk. You're like, what are we going to do now? Right. Yeah. And so, kind of always having the idea of like, we're here to serve. We're going to be compassionate. We want to help you. We want our clients to have great experiences, and this is a recovery house. And so if you're not interested in recovery, you can't be here. Sort of guided all of our decisions. I'm an into action guy and learn from, my experiences, my mistakes. I believe that, mistakes are fine as long as you learn from them. You can't make them twice. I think that it was more learn as we go, as opposed to let's try and plan for every scenario. Yeah. Right.
So day one, you call the center that you're going to get all these referrals from. They hang up on you. What are the conversations like between you and your other partners at that time? You said, hey, this isn't going to work out the way we thought it was going to, but I have a plan.
That's exactly right. I shared with my partners that phone call and I said, but here's what we're going to do. And, again, between he and I, we had a pretty large network. We had a large network of both, Wall Street colleagues, Fairfield County colleagues, college colleagues. Because of our experience and where we grew up and where we went to school and where we worked, they were all rooting for us. And they were all very interested in what we were doing. And they all had friends or loved ones who had either gotten help or needed help. And so, it was just a matter of continuing to tell our story to whoever would listen. And, eventually people started coming. And once again, so we opened in January 2016. We had our first client in the third week of January 2016. We had our third client in March of 2016. By October of 2016, we were full. We had 8 guys and 8 beds. So, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that long, right? From going from nobody to we're full. And now, are we thinking about a second house or what do we do now? Jack, our first employee, had to get, knee surgery around Thanksgiving of 2016. And I'm like, thank God, because we need your bed.
That's another room. Like,
yeah,
great.
Exactly.
Oh man, what was bring us into your head that first year. What is keeping you up at night? What are you constantly thinking as a first-time founder of a recovery residence?
Well, I was really happy. I didn't realize how much I had been for 23 years, right? I had the same schedule every day, like up, go to work, get my coffee, turn on my computer, start calling clients, market opens, watch the market all day long, trade stocks, market closes. It had become kind of a rote process. And to go from that to wake up in the morning, I have nothing to do. And it's a little scary, but there's some freedom about it, right? So I got to start going back to morning AA meetings that I hadn't been going to for a long time. And I got to see my kids before school and I got to exercise on a regular basis. What was keeping me up at night was what's my burn rate on the cash, right? Because I'm not paying myself. And so I need to understand how long can I go without paying myself? Yeah. And my partners as well. And I think what made us successful early was that first client coming in in, that second client coming in, like we were so confident that if they had good experiences, that would be good, not only for them, but for us. And it would just kind of build momentum if they were talking about how great an experience they had at the Lighthouse.
Yeah.
And that turned out to be true. What I can tell you today is that that's not the experience that most people have going to treatment, right? Like, listen, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to go to rehab today, because I think that's a great idea, right? Most people are going there against their will. Most people are going at a bottom, right? And so to take, a time in your life when you're super vulnerable and things are not going well, and to turn it into something that you say, that was a great experience for me. I'm so glad I did that. And I don't want to do it again, but if anyone comes in my path that looks like they might need help like I did, that's the only place I'm going to tell them to go.
Yeah.
My experience has been that most clients do not have such a positive experience with their treatment center that they want to be an active alumni in it. And our experience is opposite. Most of our alumni do want to stay connected with us and enjoy staying connected with us.
Yeah. When your first client walked through the door, did you and your partner kind of go behind their back and go like, we did it? Yes. Or was it like, yeah, no, we knew this would happen? Like, were you a little worried for those first 3 weeks or not so much?
No, I remember that client very well. Michael, single guy, and he was just super excited to live in a 10,000 square foot home with staff around him by himself, right? Like he wanted to be pampered and we did. And so even after that first phone call, that treatment center that said, we don't know who you are, I was still confident that we were putting on a product on the table. Because again, at this point, Serenity still is operating in New York City. It eventually went out of business, and that was a whole nother lesson that I learned from. But I knew there was a market. I knew there were people that were looking for this type of product. And what we had to do was just figure out how to message it and tell people about it. And that eventually they would come. And they did. Clients 2, 3, and 4 all came from treatment center in Connecticut, Mountainside. They were our profile by and large, older guys that couldn't go home or shouldn't go home. And my conviction that there was a market for it didn't waver, right? Because it was now happening in New York City regularly. And I knew that not everybody wanted to live in New York City.
When those first 4 guys came in from that center, was that one of the centers you had reached out to and done your networking with?
Yep.
Just curious, since you are a master networker, after somebody refers someone to the Lighthouse, what do you do to kind of show gratitude?
A couple things. One is keep them updated on that client's progress, right? 2, if it's appropriate, again, refer clients to them if you believe that they are the appropriate spot for a phone call that you get. Build relationship with them, understand their organization, who is their typical client, who are they best fit for, and, continue to highlight wins, make them look good however you can, right?
Yeah.
And we did.
Yeah. You said, that first year you were happy. And I guess I was surprised. I was assuming you'd say, man, stressful, doing something new, never done it before. But you said happy. What made you so happy about this new path you were taking in life?
I think, Andrew, like I talked about, like what I loved doing in those 8 years between, starting recovery myself and starting the Lighthouse. Some of my best moments were mentoring and helping other guys navigate what I had navigated. And I got to do that on a regular basis. Anyone that was living at the Lighthouse, I was always around, so I could sit down with them if they wanted or if I wanted, and kind of, where are you?
Yeah.
How can I help you? Right.
Yeah.
That's what drove my joy and inner peace. Right. And I guess I was going to a lot more 12-step meetings myself. I had more time for my own self-care. Today I can clearly see that for me, taking care of myself first is key to being able to give our clients a good experience. And so I do it. I do it regularly.
I guess one reason I'm asking is sometimes when you take something you're very passionate about doing, mentoring, and then you add this structure around it of, okay, I'm going to do this as a business, kind of changes the dynamics a little bit. You're like, oh, I really liked doing this when I didn't have to worry about paying my people. So I'm just curious if that ever came into play.
I don't remember that being an issue, right? I had a board on my office at the Lighthouse, and it had 8 slots for 8 beds. Most of those early days was spent like, how am I going to fill up those 8 slots, right? How am I going to encourage and attract clients to come here? So that was fun for me. Was it stressful? I guess it was a little bit, but so was, trading hundreds of millions of dollars of equities on a daily basis. So like, it wasn't like I had been a librarian before, right? I had been in high pressure and intense, day-to-day business situations in the past. So that kind of seemed normal to me. If anything, I would be frustrated at the pace, right? I was used to, at the end of the day, when I was working on Wall Street, I could point to a dollar figure of how much commission I created on a daily basis. And that's how I valued my day.
Yeah.
And that was much harder to do at the Lighthouse because there was many days when I didn't generate any revenue. And so that was harder, right?
Mm-hmm.
The more I learned about the addiction treatment landscape as a whole, the more curious I became about it. And I guess to back up, right, when I needed help myself, I didn't do a broad search. There was no recovery.com.
Yeah.
I likely knew of the place that I went to, Silver Hill, because I lived 10 minutes away. And so I can't even remember how I thought through that process of like, oh, I need to call them, but I didn't call anybody else. I wasn't even aware that there was hundreds of other places, right? So it was an awakening, right? Like, oh my gosh. So, if you're a managing director at Morgan Stanley, if you don't go to Silver Hill, where are you going?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And like, oh, there's a whole ecosystem of places that person might go. I'm curious about those places. Like, I'm genuinely curious. How is it different from my experience? Like, how do they do things differently than the place I went?
Yeah.
And so like getting on a plane, like didn't feel like business or work to me. I was just like genuinely curious about what that whole landscape looks like.
So, we're 10 years into this thing. How has running the Lighthouse become easier and harder from year 1 to year 10?
It's a good question. I have a couple of thoughts. The first few years at the Lighthouse, we didn't make any money, right? Our expenses outweighed our revenue. And originally I was okay with that. But then COVID came. We wouldn't have been in business if PPP hadn't happened, right? So the government was handing out free money. We got some of it, fortunately, or else we would have been closed.
Yeah.
But what came out of that was like this realization, like we're not going to be able to just have losses every year. We had raised a little bit more capital and our investors were, super mission aligned and not happy, but like patient, right? They were super patient and still are today.
Yep.
But eventually we had to start making money. And so how are we going to start making money was kind of a process. What happened in 2019 or even 2018 was really important. So a guy named Phil Valentine, who was the executive director at the Connecticut Center for Addiction Recovery, otherwise known as CCAR, had started this recovery coaching certification process. And so I knew nothing about recovery coaching. I didn't know what a recovery coach was or what they did. But Phil Valentine, again, just complete happenstance and lucky for us, CCAR was 45 minutes from me. Mm-hmm. And so again, got in my car, went to meet Phil, understand what recovery coaching is, and thought this is great. I think what recovery coaching is phenomenal, especially because not everybody wants to go to AA or is going to be interested in going to, working with a sponsor and going through 12 steps. So once I understood what Phil was doing, we had all of our staff certified as recovery coaches. And then we said, it might be a good idea to have each of our clients kind of connected with a coach or a staff member one-on-one and just as, kind of a guide. And that worked so well that what happened was our clients were, when they were leaving the Lighthouse, they'd say, Trey, I've had a great experience here. I'd like to continue to see my recovery coach even after I leave here. Yeah. And I said, that makes sense for you and for us. And, we can charge you a little something for it and you can come back here for dinner and it keeps our community robust and large. And it'd be nice to have, somebody with 6 months or 9 months sitting with a guy that just got here, right? And needs to see what the path forward and have mentors. So long story short, we created the Recovery 365 program for people that don't live in the Lighthouse, who maybe have now moved out of the Lighthouse, but want to continue to do what they're doing. Today, we have, double, sometimes triple the number of clients who don't live with us, but who are using our recovery coaching. We started family coaching and coming to meals and events and basically joining our community, but not sleeping there. And that was a whole piece of the business that we never even thought of until, again, an outgrowth of our client experience. And their feedback was, I want to keep doing this. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Let's make a business around that. Today, the difference in the decisions is still we make them slowly and we learn from our experiences. For example, yesterday at our executive team meeting, we talked about, we don't really have a policy for what if one of our staff members has a relapse. Should we? And if we do, what should that be? We think through it thoughtfully. We obviously, can't have any staff members showing up inebriated or under the influence. It's kind of more macro. Like I'm not worried about the Lighthouse going out of business tomorrow. We've developed a great reputation. We have a good brand. Our clients, for the most part, have a great experience. And so the decisions today are less, we need to solve for this today and more macro. Yeah. That's just a benefit and an outgrowth of having 10 years of operating experience now.
Right. How many folks are on the team now?
All in, maybe 25.
25?
Yeah.
Do you have any marketers on the team?
No,
No.
that's why I'm here.
So you wear many hats, right? So what are you all responsible for at the Lighthouse?
So what am I responsible for is mostly my biggest responsibility is still business development. Anyone that calls us is talking to me first.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's given us a big advantage. We don't really have any competitors, but when a prospect, someone that's looking for help calls and they get the CEO on the phone on the first call, I think that sets the tone. It lets that person know how important we think that phone call is and how seriously we take it. For good or for bad, that's always been the case. And the reason that I was interested in coming down here is to learn more about marketing and business development, because I think I also intuitively know that that can't always be the case. And that eventually if we're going to grow more, somebody else is going to be taking those phone calls.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you, when you get those phone calls, have you changed how you talk about the Lighthouse at all from year one to now? And not just, we have different offerings, but how you're describing the whole experience.
Couple thoughts. My wife, who sometimes happens to be in the room or the car when I'm on a call, she would tell you if she was sitting here with us, Trey's much more confident in a way. Well, of course, you've been doing this for 10 years, but I think it's also like we have proof of concept now, right? Like what we are doing, what we're offering has worked. And so when I'm talking to a client, it's not theoretical. It's not, you could get, this outcome, or we think this might work for you. I know it works for you. Mm-hmm. If you are a Wall Street executive or a business owner or a tech executive and you're 46 years old and you're married and you have children and you got a lot going on in your life, but you have a substance use problem and you've been to treatment and you need to get a ton of support after treatment and you live in the New York metro market, I know we're the best option for you.
Yeah. Over the 10 years, did you ever subtly let someone who is not an executive, did you ever think about going for a larger pool of potential guests?
Let's be clear. Not every one of our clients is an executive, right? In fact, not all of our clients are employed, right? Mm-hmm. Not all of our clients are 46 and have kids. We have retired clients. We have younger clients that have yet to kind of blaze a trail professionally, because we get phone calls from people that don't fit perfectly, but then it depends on the milieu at the current time. And so for example, if I get a phone call from a parent of a 27-year-old who, is coming out of treatment and they would like their child to come to the Lighthouse, if we're kind of skewing lower or younger in the demographic at that time, it might not be the right fit. But if we think that 27-year-old can get lifted up by the rest of the guys that are there, then yeah, it might make sense. I get a lot of calls from parents that would like their child to come with us. And, a lot of times I'm glad you called. Let me give you some recommendations. I don't think we're the right fit. Mm-hmm. Right. So yeah, we're able to be a little bit more picky, if that's the right word, about who's coming, because we do know what we're really good at and where we struggle, right? The typical Lighthouse client, we don't program them all day like they do in treatment, right? So if they have no job and nothing to do, we can't be responsible for babysitting them from, morning until our stuff will start around 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And so we kind of try and avoid clients that don't have anything to do. The other interesting thing that happened was when I thought about what we were setting up, my assumption incorrectly was that every client was going to be writing their own check for their stay. If they had a wife, great. If they had, a boss or a trustee, I understand, But what turned out to happen was about half of the clients were writing that check and the other half, somebody else was writing that check. And what that meant was we had to build a relationship with the payer, right? Because they had expectations about what their loved one's care was going to look like. And we needed to have a conversation with them about, kind of what we do and how we do it. So our expectations were aligned, which is why we introduced the whole family coaching thing. So now every client that comes has a family coach, and that family coach can be kind of a buffer between the client and us.
So you're here at the Mental Health Marketing Conference to learn a little bit about marketing. And then recently, over the last year, you've started to become more active on LinkedIn, and you're posting a lot more from your own account. Usually it's about experiences you've had during your recovery. It's about the Lighthouse. It's about kind of the state of treatment and executive treatment. What made you interested in that?
I found that over the years, 25% of our referrals were coming from my personal Wall Street network, college network, high school network. These were not people that were reaching out to me because they were at a treatment center and gotten our name for the next step. These were people that either knew me peripherally or very closely. And so I thought to myself, there's a lot to be learned in the greater public about like what early recovery looks like for me. And as a corollary, right, like it'll help somebody understand what a lighthouse journey might look like. Then I met Dan Fogarty, who you and I agree is really talented at what he does. And he helped me understand how he could assist me in crafting LinkedIn content that would be interesting to consume for non-treatment professionals. I will say that, most of my relationships are still sort of outside of the treatment industry. Again, we don't fit in any bucket very well. We're not a treatment center. We don't take insurance. We don't offer clinical services. We're not a sober house. We're kind of an N of one. And so it's been tough to find other places that I can learn from. So the reason for posting the LinkedIn content is because I also think there's still I see it in my clients, like a lot of hesitation about being open and honest about their recovery because they feel ashamed about it. And I felt that too, but I think there's help and utility in having people hear, what it was like for me and being public about it. Like the last one that, we just put up was about my experience and my feelings about AA when I got there. And, I got tons and tons of positive feedback from people all across my network, right? Like from old Wall Street buddies to college friends to therapists at treatment centers, like weighing in on their opinion. And I think that for some people, like just normalizing the idea of going to AA is helpful, right? It doesn't have to be secret. Like you can tell people.
Yeah. Yeah. So what has the reception been? Like, have you seen, is it impacting people who are just getting to know you, maybe connecting with you on LinkedIn? Is it having off of LinkedIn activities? People actually saying, I want to go to treatment now. And I think I'll call Trey first.
It's too early to give you a definitive answer. I think we're into the second inning of this project, of this thesis, but all of the above, right? I will get outreach from somebody that read me or saw me on LinkedIn. I will get new, connection requests from a widely diverse group of people. And that speaks to my, kind of ongoing interest in networking, right? Like I'm curious about new people. I'm curious about who God puts in my path. And so I'm more apt, if I put something out there and get a message back or a connection request back, like, cool. Unfortunately, 75% of those connection requests are trying to sell me something, but I'm good at just saying, I'm not interested, but thanks.
Yeah. The polite decline.
Yeah.
So, bring out your crystal ball. What's next for the Lighthouse?
I think one of the reasons we've been successful is that we don't have any grand plans. I think that, again, bringing it back to if we give our clients great experience, if they love their time with us and they see a benefit from it, then we're going to get a lot of opportunities. I could see a scenario where 10 years from now, you and I are sitting here talking and you say, remember when we talked back in Franklin and I asked you, like, what's the crystal ball look like? And I could see a scenario where we've expanded geographically into other affluent neighborhoods or areas where we think we can replicate what we've done in New Canaan in other spots. I can also see a scenario where we haven't expanded geographically, but we've expanded our capacity locally. The last growth initiative we did was we added 3 apartments in New Canaan as kind of the next phase in the continuum for Lighthouse Care. And that's been really well received. And so, kind of like what, Bobby Ferguson did at Jaywalker, you start with one lodge and then you've got the next house. I can see continued growth just in New Canaan where we double or triple the number of beds that we have. And it's just, longer lengths of stay. And people just want to hang around New Canaan because it's a nice place to be. We're just going to keep doing what we do and let God or higher power, host of things be our, guide, be open to opportunities, continue to build the team of great people, super compassionate that want to support recovery and see where that takes us, right? It's exciting. I'd like to know what the crystal ball says too.
Yeah. Looking back, how do you think starting the Lighthouse has impacted your life?
Again, I'm 55 years old. For 23 years, my identity was as a Wall Street guy, right? And I couldn't imagine a life where that wasn't my identity. And today it's not. I'm a retired or ex-Wall Street guy. I'm not sure that I want to be thought of as a addiction treatment or behavioral health guy, but starting the Lighthouse has given me a new identity and has given me the opportunity to really help people, which again, isn't something I ever thought I wanted until I started doing it and realized how good it made me feel. And just, because I'm an alcoholic and an addict, whatever makes me feel good, I want to do more of.
Yeah, right.
It's just redirected my mission and my purpose in my life. Also it's given me much, much better home life, right? I'm much more present than I was years ago for my family because my business is 5 minutes from my house.
Yeah.
And what a blessing. What a blessing.
Yeah.
I'm just really lucky.
Any words of wisdom that you might share with someone who's thinking they might want to found either a recovery home or a substance use treatment facility?
Yeah, I mean, I bring it back to like, you have to understand what your personal balance sheet looks like, and you have to understand what your motivation looks like. And, how long can you go without taking a paycheck? For some, it's, longer than others, but there will be a period of time where there won't be any income. Your expenses will outweigh your income, and you need to be mindful of that. At least I did. I remember there was a treatment center that opened in Brooklyn back in like 20, call it 18, 19. And I thought, this is great. It was high end. It was pretty. It was, well decorated. The clinical team was good. And I was like, this place is going to be a home run. It's going to take a while because based on my experience, people don't just start sending you people on day one because you tell them you're open.
Right.
But eventually this is going to work. And the reason it's going to work is because when, a Wall Street guy wakes up in his loft in Tribeca or, comes to after, partying for the third night in a row and says, man, I can't do this anymore. I need help. And what is the closest place I can get help? And if they were to understand that they could get in a taxi and be in this place in 20 minutes, that's gonna work. That place closed after 18 months, or they sold it after 18 months, and it became something completely different because they didn't have the runway, And so you got to be patient, man. You got to be patient. People aren't going to trust you on day one just because you opened your doors. You got to earn their trust. And that's been our experience.
How many folks do you think you've helped at the Lighthouse?
Yeah, we're just over 1,000.
Amazing. Anyone stick out or kind of
several?
Remember, yeah.
Yeah, my buddy Mike. So Mike came to the Lighthouse from Miami, and, he was a young executive, single, with a terrible substance use problem. He got to the Lighthouse and he ended up staying for 18 months. In that 18-month period, he had ups and downs, but he eventually, found it, loved it. And today, is married with a family in New Canaan. I see him most mornings, and, he's a guy that, he's leading our alumni council. Just an amazing story of recovery. And I've gotten to sit shotgun and watch the whole thing. And he's one of, 100, right? That has come to the Lighthouse and has literally changed their life, whether they stay in New Canaan or change their career or just find a different way. That's super gratifying. And then you can't put a number on it, right? Like they're going to pay you what they pay you, but like to be able to feel like you're a part of that, it's a great feeling.
Trey, if someone wants to learn more about the Lighthouse or about you, what should they do? Google
my name, Trey Laird, the Lighthouse. You'll find me.
Awesome.
Yeah. Email, cell phone. We're still small enough where all the phones ring to my phone. You'll get me.
Yeah. Check him out on LinkedIn. Trey, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about the Lighthouse.
My pleasure, man. Great to be here. Good to hang.
Awesome.